Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center here in Houston. We're having a briefing today to talk about NASA's assistance to the trapped miners in Chile. A team was sent there last week and has returned and can talk about that experience. We'll turn it over to the team members. We have 3 here at the Johnson Space Center and also 1 on the phone line from NASA's Langley Research Center, where the NASA Engineering and Safety Center is located. I'll turn it over to the lead of the team, who is Dr. James Michael Duncan. Michael Duncan served as the lead, and he will introduce the rest of the team members. He's the Deputy Chief Medical Officer here for the Johnson Space Center. Doctor.
Thanks, Kylie. We had the privilege of being able to travel to Chile as a result of the Chilean government asking, through our State Department, NASA's input into the rescue effort for the miners. That input was primarily related to medical aspects, behavioral health support, and also looking at areas in sanitation and hygiene, and most importantly, or as importantly, nutritional support of the miners. While in Chile, we were our primary interface was with the Minister of Health, as well as representatives from the Chilean Space Agency, who helped get us through the travels in the country and getting us to the mine. It was a very rewarding experience for us in that we were able to say hello to the miners, as well as say hello to the families, and get detailed briefings from the Minister of Mining, the Minister of Health, some of the mining engineers that were associated with this rescue effort, and be able to spend 3 full days at the mine site, being able to evaluate their operations and understand the medical care that the miners are receiving, as well as the behavioral health support for the miners and the families, and review the status of the nutrition of the miners. On the team, we had two physicians, myself and Dr. J.D. Polk, who's at my far left. Dr. Polk is the chief of the Space Medicine Division here at Johnson Space Center. His expertise is in emergency medicine, as well as medical evacuation, in particular air evacuation. To my immediate left is Dr. Al Holland, who's a psychologist with us here at Johnson Space Center, with a long history of dealing with our astronauts and families, and doing behavioral support of them, getting them through our long-duration missions on the space station. And the other member of our team who is online with us today is Mr. Clint Craig. 30 years in the Navy with command experience in the submarine forces in the Navy. Currently, he is with the NASA Engineering and Safety Center and is a principal engineer in that organization. So let me turn it over, if I may, to each of my team members to also make some brief opening remarks, and I'll ask Dr. Holland to begin.
Yeah, our experience down there for the few days that we were on site, we learned a great deal. The miners were in excellent spirits. They had done a lot for their own health before they were even found. They had organized into groups. They had established a hierarchy among themselves, and they had done a lot in terms of taking responsibility for their own fate. And these were all very positive signs, and by the time the rescuers did locate them 17 days into the confinement, they were still doing well. And so the topside people found that they were doing an excellent job of supporting the miners and the miners' families. We were able to have some discussions with our counterparts, in my case with the coordinating psychologist down there. And were very fruitful discussions, covered a wide range of topics. I left with the sense that they had a very capable, competent, determined team on the top side to assist the families of the miners.
Thanks, Al. And let me turn it over to Dr. Polt for his comments about medical aspects.
This is an operation that's probably unprecedented in scope. Never have so many been trapped for so long, so deeply. We were very impressed with not only how the Chilean government has responded to this incident, but also the medical care specifically. They've given a great deal of thought into the care. There are specific intricacies, both in refeeding people that have been starving, as well as rescuing people from this location. And they have given a great deal of thought to each one of these facets. And we were very impressed with the actions by the medical team, and it was a very collegial experience as we went down there. They were very receptive of our recommendations and our consultation, but it was very much colleague to colleague, and the operation itself is very impressive.
Thanks, J.D. And the last member of the team, Clint Craig, some opening remarks?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, this is Clint Craig. One of my jobs on this, or the job for me during this mission, was to support the doctors on any engineering aspects of issues that they might have discovered down there. I had an opportunity to spend quite some time with the mining engineers that were working the problem down there, as well as one of the key leaders of the site, who himself was also a submariner. And my feeling is that they are really doing well in this entire rescue effort, that they've got the right attitude. The team spirit down there is incredibly high, and I think they're going to sort everything out in the long term. That's all I got, Mike.
Thanks, Greg. And I think it's important for us to remember here that the Chileans call this Operation San Lorenzo. St. Lorenzo is the patron saint of the miners, as we were told. This is really not about NASA. We're a pretty small part in the overall operation. The Chileans were interested in our input and are also obtaining input from other sources to make sure that they are doing everything possible for the miners. And it is indeed about the miners and the Chilean effort to make this a successful rescue. Okay.
With that, we'll start with the question and answer part of the briefing. We'll start here at the Johnson Space Center locally and other NASA centers, and also on the line. If you could please direct your question to one of the briefers if possible, and state your name and affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Carreau, representing Aviation Week in Space Technology. And I think my question is for Dr. Duncan, but please feel free to share as you need. I'm wondering what happens now in terms of NASA involvement. Will you have long-running, will you follow the events? Will you be available to them? And explain, if you are, kind of how that is, if it's by phone or teleconference, or if you'll be going back.
Sure. We hope to have a continued working relationship with the individuals that we met down there. I think the physicians and the psychologists were very receptive to wanting to have continued discussions with us and input. This is going to be a very dynamic situation for a long period of time, and I'm sure they'll have questions and want to bounce ideas off of us, some things that we've learned. You know, that communication in this day and age can occur in any number of ways, through electronic means, email, phone, those types of things. As far as any return trip at this point, the Chileans have not asked us to return. I'm sure if that type of request came through, we would give it, its due consideration and go from there. And maybe Al would have some additional thoughts with regards to, continued communication.
Yeah, I think that from the psychological point of view, we'll be in pretty continuous communication at their initiative with the psychological folks there. because, like Mike said, it's a very dynamic situation, and over time, individuals and groups change, and so their situation will change, events will occur, and there'll be opportunities to talk. So I'm sure we'll be doing at least telecons.
And if I might ask a follow-up question, I'm interested in, I don't want to make this sound like quid pro quo, but I'm sort of wondering if NASA's participation in this event would allow you to draw something of benefit to future space missions. I don't know, one sort of on the surface sees this as a bit of a Apollo 13 on the ground, and thank goodness that hasn't happened here for a long time, but I just wonder if there are lessons to be learned that NASA could draw from this tragedy.
Well, I think it's certainly possible. As we go along understanding what dynamics develop in this particular situation of 33 miners in a very isolated environment, we'll be, I think, learning along with the Chileans on how to approach these things. There are some things that we know from our long duration experience and long duration research that we can maybe help them predict some things to be expecting, and then at the conclusion of all this, I'm sure we will be reviewing some lessons learned and gleaning from that anything that might be of useful to us in dealing with isolated environments.
Hi, Eric Berger with the Houston Chronicle. Thanks for doing this today. I've got a couple questions. The first one I think is for Dr. Duncan. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, you mentioned, and the other panel members mentioned they did a lot of listening. Maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the specific pieces of advice that you provided, or sort of guidance you gave them in terms of dealing with the situation. Okay.
I think one of the things that struck us initially when we first received the briefing from our Chilean counterparts is that it was they were looking towards the rescue as actually physically getting the miners out of the mine, and we brought to their attention our experience and the experience of others, that really the work is just beginning when the miners come out of the mine, because there's a lot of rehabilitation, recovery that the miners will have to go through. There is, a reintroduction of the miner to the family. There's reintroduction of the miner to society. And, when these miners come out, they will, in their own right, have a certain celebrity status within their country. And there will be a lot of pressures put upon them by, the society, the media, others wanting, part of their time. And I think the Chileans had not gotten to that point of thinking how difficult this post-rescue effort is going to be. And that's one of the biggest things that we help bring their attention to. Let me ask some of the other panel members, if you don't mind, to make some comment, and I'll ask Al to start.
Well, this is certainly a new thing for them, so and for all of us, actually. But I think some of the areas that we did discuss in depth was the circadian rhythm, circadian cycles, sleep-wake cycles, and how some entrainment or a little bit more lighting, systematic way of lighting, scheduling light and dark down there would benefit their mood and their sleep and the social stability. We also talked about training and content for training for the miners and for the family members as time goes by, so that they know what to expect in long duration confinement, and they know what to expect upon coming out, and how best to support one another along the way. We talked at length about the post-extraction time and ways to protect the miners and the families, both medically and psychologically, during the first 24 to 48 hours post-extraction. We talked about the desirability of having more than a one deep organization, or in places where they're only one deep, to have a backup and an alternate person who can be working issues so they can rotate the topside people. I think in general, like Mike was saying, there was a great focus on the immediacy of the need to bring the people out of the mine. And actually now they're beginning to adjust their thinking. The miners perhaps are leading the way, but the families, the Chilean topside rescue personnel, and the country down there, I think, is beginning to shift its mindset to one of a marathon run rather than a sprint. And marathons, as you know, have very different pacing, have a very different set of strategies than a sprint does. And so we talked at length about those types of things.
And the second question was maybe for Dr. Holland or for Dr. Polk. Maybe just talk about what are some of the analogs between what they're going through and what astronauts might be going through in long-term space flight.
Well, yeah, the seclusion of folks for a long duration, whether that's in a sub, whether that's in the Antarctic, whether that's on the space station, that's certainly one thing that they're in common. Where they differ is that in most of our analogs we have good communication, we have good logistics and resupply. It took a while to get to those things to the miners. The miners, fortunately, as Allie alluded to, are the masters of their own fate because of their leadership and their own instincts and will to survive. They were able to sustain themselves for about 2+ weeks until they were found. That's unprecedented. And you know, those types of skills certainly will be needed, whether it's exploration, whether it's Antarctic, whether it's undersea. We'll certainly learn as much from the miners as they are learning from us, from our past experiences. As Al alluded to with the marathon, one of the things that was beneficial, I think, for the Chilean government was to break this into phases. And we broke this into 5 phases: the incident phase, the initial survival phase, a sustainment phase, the rescue phase, and then the recovery phase. And each of those phases have their own distinct requirements, their own distinct problems, their own distinct set of challenges that the Chileans have to gear up for. And each of those will require different talents and different skill sets. So it's looking at that mission across a broad range of phases not only helps the Chileans, but helps us for future exploration missions as well.
Carl Willis with KPRC. One of the greatest moments that we saw was these miners being able to teleconference with their loved ones while they're down there. Can you tell us how important or what kind of impact that human contact can have in surviving a situation like this?
Clearly, it's essential. The contact that you have with your social support system, your loved ones, as we all know, is essential for us going through any hardship. But for their hardship, which is severe, it's extremely essential. So regular contact on a regular basis so that there's something they can expect. For instance, on a weekend, they can expect that on Saturday they'll have a chance to talk with their loved one. It's really good to have these expectations, give them something to look forward to. There's also care in that excessive communication can be problematic, believe it or not. If there's too much communication all the time, then sometimes people have difficulty adjusting to where they are, and they feel like they need to take on the responsibilities of topside if they're a miner. Or the people topside feel like they have to take on and help solve problems for the miners, the individual loved one down in the mine themselves. And so it's a little bit excessive. It's like any other analog situation on Earth when you would go somewhere. Communication's important, essential for your support, your emotional sustenance, but at the same time, a little bit of distance enables you to solve the problems where you are, and it allows the other person to take responsibility and solve the problems where they are.
There's also something I read somewhere about the strict organizational structure that was kind of implemented down there. Can you kind of tell us what kind of things were not allowed, what things were frowned upon, what things were permitted?
During the period of time when the miners had no contact topside and they were working on their own to survive, the miners, for that shift, they had a lead, but that lead then established jobs and lead areas for other miners within the group and jobs for everyone to do, and establish shifts. So, it was, very important for them to, to do that and to survive to the point for when they were found. Now, there's more support topside. We have, things that need to be done to, sustain them, food resupply, supply of stores in case for some reason communication and access through these long tubes is blocked for some reason, and so there's a number of jobs that that we are having, or the Chileans I should say, are having them do. As far as things that were not allowed, there were some requests for, let's say, smoking, for example. Most of the miners, as we understand it, do smoke. Given the confined conditions and the low atmospheric turnover of the chamber that they're in, we did not feel that that was a good situation. In addition, the mine conditions have been fairly dusty. And so from a lung standpoint, we didn't want to add additional insults, for their health. But, I think their team counseled the miners that they needed to work together. And so, it would be frowned upon to have just somebody going off on their own, doing something, without coordination with the group. But I'm not thinking that there were any other restrictions. Maybe Al has some other thoughts on that.
Alcohol. Alcohol was a restriction. But just another, or along the same lines, the miners organized themselves. It wasn't a strict hierarchy imposed from the top, and that's the best way to have it these things come up from the mining group themselves, and the topside people support these efforts to organize themselves and to turn an abnormal situation down there into a more normal situation. Regular times of day where you have meals, etc., that provides a sense of normality. And so I think the top side is suggesting ways they can do that and advising them on ways. But as much as possible, they're trying to preserve the miners' initiative on this.
And thanks, Al, for the reminder. We did, make the suggestion that alcohol probably wasn't in their best interest at this moment. First of all, from a nutritional standpoint, we have to get their nutritional status back up to protect their health, and we didn't want alcohol to interfere with that. And also, just like in the flight environment, you don't want to have alcohol or other medications that might alter the individual's response, especially in emergency circumstances. So, our preference was not to see that occur.
Hi, Myra Moreno with Channel 39. Question for you. Where do they stand right now as far as the rescue is concerned? I understand there's drills being done, but what is the process right now? I don't know if you mentioned yet or not.
What is the...
Where do they stand right now? I understand it's going to be months before they can actually be taken out of there.
You know, for the absolute detail on that, it's probably best to ask the Chilean engineers that are responsible. But our understanding is that they're still, months away from, from the rescue. They have 3 plans that they are trying to put into work. One plan is to drill a vertical hole that is in progress. At the time that we left on Saturday morning, that hole was about 40-some meters deep, as I recall. It is a slow process and will take many weeks for that drill to get down to the miners. The hole size is about 26 inches in diameter. They do have 2 other plans, another hole to be drilled. They're all about approximately the same diameter. Two of the 3 plans will leave, will be without any casing within the shaft. And the 3rd plan is actually, as we understand it, a petroleum drilling rig that will actually drill this size hole and have a steel casing that will be laid down as the hole is drilled. Also, as we understand it, this 3rd plan, Plan C as they call it, by the petroleum rig, it is actually a faster drilling process, but it will take them several weeks to actually get it on site and assemble it before it's ready to begin drilling. So there will be, they have all 3 of these plans put together so that whichever plan arrives at the chamber first, the others will then be continued to drill as backup rescue tubes.
Hi, I'm Marianne Hellinghausen. I'm with the Bay Area Citizen. I have 2 questions. First, could you be more specific on the nutritional and medical supplies and the challenges of getting them down there? I understand there's they call it the Dove. It's like the tube that goes down and it's very narrow.
That's our literal translation, but they call it Paloma, P-A-L-O-M-A.
Okay. And can you just describe in more detail about those nutritional and medical and other the advice that you were giving them about that?
Okay. Well, let me just describe the Palomas, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Polk to talk to the nutritional and medical aspects. The Palomas, once the cave-in occurred, the Chileans drilled approximately 15 holes before they were able to find the miners in the particular location that they were. And then they were able to drill 3 holes near one another into that chamber. Those holes are about 6 inches in diameter, and they're steel lined. They have a casing. And through those holes, they pass devices that are, don't hold me to this, but roughly about 2 meters long, that are tubes or torpedoes that have, the ends capped, and within that volume they can insert anything that will fit, basically. They then cap those, hook a line to it, and allow gravity to drop that torpedo down into where the miners are. The miners, it takes about 10 minutes for that Paloma device to reach the miners. The miners then have 10 minutes to unload whatever has been sent to them, and then load anything back in that they want to send topside. And then it takes another 10 minutes for the Paloma to get back up, and it's pulled up by a winch. It's a very labor-intensive kind of activity. The 30-minute cycle of this, the volume is not great, so this is a 24-hour-a-day operation to provide all sorts of supplies, whether it be food supplies, medical supplies. They actually went out in the open and requested if there were any companies in Chile that made cots, for example, that would fit inside these tubes, and they could send them down to the miners so that the miners wouldn't have to sleep on the ground. They would actually be able to sleep in what I think most of us would think of as an army-type cot, but these were aluminum and canvas kind of devices. So very ingenious way of innovation on their part to get some of the needed supplies. So that's how the operation works, and let me turn it over to Dr. Polk to talk to the nutrition and medical aspects.
In regards to the nutrition and medical, they did an outstanding job. Refeeding folks that have been starving is not a simple thing, and in fact, if done incorrectly, can be life-threatening. The miners had reduced themselves before they were found to about a tablespoon of tuna and an inch and a cup of milk about every other day. So they were literally less than probably 200 calories every other day at that point in time. It's not as simple as just giving them carbohydrate and sending as much food as possible down the hole. The risk that we have is one in a precipitous drop of potassium and phosphate, and refeeding them has to be done low and slow, and it has to include generous amounts of phosphate, potassium, and thiamine to prevent cardiac dysrhythmias and even cardiac arrest from cardiac failure. They did a textbook refeeding plan. They followed with different formulations that included those particular elements, did it in a stepwise fashion to bring the calories up so that the body's metabolism could get used to glycogen stores again and insulin. It was an outstanding plan, and probably ended up saving several miners in the interim. The other thing that we worry about certainly is something called rhabdomyolysis. I won't even begin to spell that for you, but it essentially amounts to muscle breakdown, both because they were sleeping on the rocks, but also because due to the starvation they were feeding off of muscle because they had already gone through their subcutaneous fat as a energy store. Your kidneys cannot tolerate huge proteins from the muscle breakdown, and you can get kidney failure. They targeted with some laboratory analysis that we had recommended the miners that had high proteins in their urine and increased their fluid intake and probably prevented kidney failure in those miners. And about 50% of the miners had shown that protein breakdown. Because of their care and attention to detail in those medical, both the refeeding plan and the treatment plan and the rehydration plan, they prevented downstream cascades of organ failure, whether it's kidney failure or cardiac failure or otherwise, and allowed us to get to this sustainment phase that we're in right now. Just a phenomenal job. They're dealing with medical issues right now that we see in long-duration spaceflight. Certainly because it's hot, it's greater than 90 degrees, and it's greater than 90% humidity. Fungal infections and things of that nature, skin breakdown, are things that they'll be chasing for some time. But we've given them some recommendations, and they've gotten recommendations elsewhere as well from different universities to help cope with those different ailments.
One follow-up. Also, could you describe being at the site of the mine and the interaction with the families there?
Sure. The site is about 40 minutes northwest of Copiapo, the closest town. We would drive out there each morning. We would go through about 3 to 4 levels of security checkpoints to finally get inside the mine or the mine area. It is really a beehive of activity with all the different engineering aspects going on, the drilling, the Paloma supply replenishment, meetings with the physicians, and they speak to the miners twice a day, and you got to remember that you're in a very remote mining area. It's very dusty. There's a lot of heavy equipment being around, moving around there. So it's a very dynamic area. Of course, it was sections, where the command and control of all the activities were. That was in the central portion. The next outside ring, if you will, is where the families were located. There is a kind of a tent city set up for the families, and if you see some of the pictures that have been taken, these are the tents that are yellow and red and white, and they're all collected together. We had the opportunity to meet the families one evening as a group, and then Al had an opportunity to meet the families on a couple of other occasions. The families have also organized themselves in a sense. They have a lady that is kind of the mayor of the group, if you will. We made some suggestions to our physician counterparts that they could utilize this person in helping with communication. But in general, the families are as you might imagine, very concerned. There's a number of family members at the site, and they were wanting to hang on to any bit of good news that we could provide, or that our Chilean counterparts could provide. We were able to just make some introductory remarks to them, and I think they were appreciative of the fact that we were there. I know they were all looking forward to having the optical fiber communication line set up, and that's when the families were then able to start to have some video conferences with their family member, both audio and video. So I'm sure they were very happy on Saturday. Al, any comments?
No, I think that that describes it. Initially, there were about 1,100 family members at the camp. Excuse me, got a cold. But as time has gone by and they've moved into longer duration operations there, the families have devised strategies to enable themselves to keep their own homes going back at home, and also to send more of a representative family member to the site. And so now, when we left, there were about 200 family members in that campsite.
Okay, with that, we'll start with the questions on the line. I'll call on the reporters in the order that were phoned in. And with the number that we have, please ask one question, and if we have time, we'll come around for follow-ups. So first, state your name and affiliation, and direct your question to a briefer if possible. And I'll call on the Christian Science Monitor, please.
Oh, thank you. What extent are folks, and you mentioned this earlier, I think you hinted at this earlier on, but supporting the foreman down there as sort of being the lead of the group, are they, the folks topside, trying to, essentially support the, I know command structure is the wrong word, but essentially the organizational structure that folks have set up underground?
Yes, they've been very supportive of the structure that was set up underground. When they actually, on day 17, when they actually found the miners, they had already established an infrastructure, and so it was a deliberate decision on the part of topside to reinforce that structure and to provide support as best they could to that leader and to his designated others as well, a spiritual leader and a medical leader.
And I also, just to follow on there, I think that before the miners were found and they had contact with the topside world, this particular foreman of the team was really shouldering a lot of the responsibility. And I think once he had contact with the topside team, was able to help think through some of these challenges that they had, he still feels a certain level of burden and responsibility, but I think his overall mood has improved since he's been able to have some contact, and they've been able to delegate some of the responsibilities to other members down there.
Next is CBS Interactive.
This is Deborah Gage. Thank you. I'm wondering how they're dealing with sanitation, and also, are the miners healthy enough, all of them, to survive this ordeal? Do you know? Like, what if someone would die?
From a sanitation standpoint, the miners had initially set up some sanitation stations. Now that they have more topside help, and we understand, the Chileans understand a little bit better the topography that they're in, and how many tunnels and how much access to other areas besides just this living chamber they've been able to make some suggestions on where to locate like the latrine, where to locate a shower area, where to locate the sleeping area, where to locate the areas for eating and recreation, and those types of things. So, I think they've been able to organize themselves along those lines with topside help. Of course, the idea of death of one of the miners is always a possibility. We have, brought up that discussion with our counterparts, and just wanted to kind of stimulate some thinking with regards to how that would be handled. I think it's important that our colleagues also have those kinds of discussions with the family members to make sure that they understand that just like in any hazardous environment, there's always the risk for something untoward to happen. With regards to their overall health, that's certainly been improving as nutrition has been supplemented, and I'll ask JD or Al to make any additional comments there.
Well, certainly, the miners are not astronauts. They weren't pre-selected and screened to the depth and length that you would an astronaut. And some of the folks just happened to be there. They were on trucks or equipment. They were not part of the mining contingent who also got trapped in the mine. So you have a potpourri of folks that bring their own risk to the table with their medical backgrounds or their medical histories. But the medical team on the top side has done an outstanding job in treating those risks, trying to make sure that we optimize their health to the best of our ability leading up to the rescue. That includes managing things like diabetes, hypertension, managing pulmonary disease, sending medications down, inhalers down, or other medical care down to make sure that we optimize their health as much as possible. And they've done a very good job to try to address those risks and to minimize them as much as possible.
Okay, next on the line is El Vocero.
Hi, I believe my question is for Dr. Holland. one of the reasons, as you said earlier, on why the miners were able to remain alive for almost 2 weeks before being contacted was because they were well organized. But according to your experience, for how long does those people in these conditions can remain focused and keep organized and not building all that tension?
Well, I think it's important to realize, for all of us to realize, that they need to form an underground community. It's going to be a group of people that live underground for a long period of time, and there will be roles and responsibilities that are allocated. And just like topside, just like us, sometimes if we tire of our role or we need a change, then we're able to swap with someone else or rotate out, and they'll be doing that as well. So organization and focus is a big part of normality. It's a big part of social structure and community. So it's important that in order to establish and continue a community, that they have this organization. And we have to expect, though, that they're going to have their ups and downs, just like we do. We have good days, we have bad days. They're going to have good days, they're going to have bad days. And the important thing is that we allow that to happen. We not make too big of a deal about small things. And we support them to return back to a good day. But there'll be challenges ahead. There'll be great challenges ahead. I think they're just now entering a period of the long run. And they're just beginning to confront some of the issues that they'll have as far as being there for a long duration.
Next on the line is Agency France Press. Is there a Diego on the line for AFP? Okay, next is Galveston County Daily News.
Hi, this is Haley Kappas with the Galveston County Daily News. I guess this question would be for Dr. Holland. You were mentioning how they've, I guess, got specific jobs set aside for different miners. When they're not working or eating or doing any of those functions, I mean, what are they doing on their downtime, and what recreation activities are recommended down there to keep their morale up?
Well, the Chileans have done a very good job of sending down games, of sending down activities that they can do as much as possible through this very small borehole resupply system that they have. There's music down there. There's a community iPod, and it's brought up periodically for recharging, and so they're able to have music as well. So they've sent down clothes, they've sent down razors, and they're trying to support that off time, that leisure time. Journals to write in, books to read, anything that can be compressed into this very small diameter Paloma is what they're doing. But you touched on the most important thing, which is meaningful work. It's very important for people in situations like this to have meaningful work to do, not make work. These men are no different. And so part of their meaningful work is continuing the responsibility of extracting themselves from this mine. And that includes maintaining the machinery, it includes maintaining the mine itself, it includes continual organization to prepare for extraction. So these are very important things for them to continue.
Okay, next is Newsweek, please.
Thank you. I'm wondering if we could talk more about sort of the materials being sent up and down and the specifics of the logistics of that. What kind of things are they sending up besides, pieces of paper and notes to their families? And how thick is the Paloma, and how much space inside are they actually working with? And maybe you can give an example of some of the more difficult things that were, some of the more creative ways that things were stuffed in there.
I'm not sure we have all the detail on that. We can only give you approximate sizes of these palomas. We can find that out in more detail. Clint Craig, I know you observed a lot of the paloma activities. Perhaps you could make some comments there.
Yeah, I think what you've mentioned, Dr. Duncan, about the size, it's probably about 4 inches in diameter and approximately 2 meters long. And they were putting all sorts of stuff in there. The last day we were there, I noted that they had some meals that were put in some styrofoam coffee cup-sized containers, and they were sending those down for each of the miners. They sent down bottled water and other sustainment stuff. And additionally, one of the engineers told me they were going to send down a I don't know what you call it, something to watch movies with. It's kind of like a projector. You can buy these very small projectors these days that are about the size of a pack of cigarettes, I'm told. Sorry, it took me a while to think of the word. But they're apparently going to be able to watch movies at specified times. Al could probably talk more about that. But Dr. Duncan had mentioned that they sent down cots and other things. So the Paloma operations are, as he said, are going nonstop, 24 hours a day, and they're working well.
I think it's important to understand that, you know, they have 33 miners to feed at least 3 meals a day, and that takes a fair amount of time to accomplish. Other things that they're sending down and the miners send back are things like the headlamps for their mining caps. They have the batteries recharged on those things, and you know, just a variety of things. They've also sent clothing down to them. It was actually, you know, once they all had an opportunity to bathe and shave and get an exchange of clothes, one of the miners actually put on a bit of a floor show showing how they look now with their blue trunks and red shirts, and they were, you know, having a good time with that activity.
Okay, next is CBS London. Is there a Jim on from CBS London? Okay, Channel 4. And Amy from Channel 4. Okay, with that, those are all the questions that we had on the line. To start out with, we'll have to wrap it up here, and for more information on this subject and other NASA programs, you can keep posted online at www.nasa.gov. Thank you.